Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bloom Conversations. I'm Clare Dewhirst. I'm the director of City Nation Place, which is the global forum for place branding and place marketing. I'm honoured that Bloom Consulting has invited me to join these podcast sessions just to introduce the discussions. I see my job as asking the questions on behalf of you to ensure that we learn the most from the Bloom experts and their guest speakers. This podcast series has been launched to celebrate Bloom's 20th anniversary. Happy birthday, Bloom. And throughout the series, we'll be diving into the world of nation branding and place branding. In each episode, we'll be looking at just one thing you could focus on to improve your nation or place brand strategy. In fact, in each episode, we'll be focusing on one of the 14 steps that Bloom have identified as being crucial to building an effective strategy. So just one thing today and 14 things over the series of conversations. In this episode, we're not looking at the key steps for nation on place branding. Instead, we are looking at the economic argument for having a nation or place brand strategy. We're going to reflect on the learnings of a project that City Nation Place was delighted to work on in partnership with the team at Bloom Consulting, a project that we called the Holy Grail. Because we were trying to measure the economic impact of a place brand. I'm delighted to have with me today Gonzalo Vilar, Managing Partner of Bloom and Global Director of Nation and Place Brand Analytics. Hello, Gonzalo.
Hello.
Lovely to see you. And also we have with us José Fernández Cavia, who is the Associate Professor with the Department of Communication at the Universitat Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. The third and very important partner on this project, providing all of the essential academic oversight on the methodology. Welcome, José. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Claire.
So we're going to get straight into it. Gonzalo, I think City Nation Place was aware of the need, and still is aware of the need, for places to demonstrate the value of what they do, for place marketing teams to demonstrate the value of what they do. Why do you think that this has been such a hard question to answer before?
Yeah. Claire, let me first say that it has been a fascinating journey. This is a study with incredible partners along the way. And as you were saying, this is I would say, the most important question to answer, right? And interesting enough, we have been asking ourselves this question for the last 20 years, right? I remember these conversations in London. Is it possible to measure? Is not impossible to measure? The challenge here is that perception is intangible, is an intangible. And that brings challenges. What is interesting is that in other industries, and we can talk about consumer goods, electronics, any other industry, this is not questioned. And there are plenty of studies that measure the impact that strong brand has on the sales, right? We dig into research, we looked at it, and we didn't find any academic paper, any study that showed this. At the end, no one dared to challenge and make that study. And there are several reasons, to be honest, because there is a common belief that this cannot be measured, which we strongly disagree, and we have proved that this is wrong. But at the end, this means that really, until today, no one really wanted to tackle this challenge because it is extremely expensive. You have to put a lot of resources in terms of people, in terms of money to develop this ad hoc study through searches and understand the perceptions. There is no guarantee on the return. Private companies who might be interested in instigating this type of projects, they need to see a return. So there is no guarantee on this. It takes a lot of time to do. This project, all in all, since inception until we published the technical paper, as still we're working on the academic papers, it is taking a journey of 2 years. It is difficult.
Feels like longer. Feels like it was 3.
Yeah, 2.5 and still there.
Yeah.
Until we stopped. But this is difficult. We need nation and city branding professionals. We need academics to validate and to give this rigor. We also need to welcome the city and nation branding officials. We need different profiles from econometrics, statistics, branding, and so on. And on top of that, there is no data available. That's why the data partners, which are the nation and the cities officials, are key to bring in this project. But all in all, and to summarize this initial statement, it's going to be polemic. It's going to be criticized. No matter what you do, how much rigor you put, how good is the end result, this study is actually a game changer for the industry, and it's going to challenge the existing beliefs that they were there on the last 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to clarify for everybody listening, the kind of different roles. I mean, Bloom, you really set the framework for the study, and City Nation Place, we brought the places together to get the data for you. But Jose, from your side, providing that academic rigor, what did you think would be the biggest challenges when Bloom first approached you?
Yes, sure. Let me remind the listeners that place branding is not only a professional field, but also an emerging academic discipline within the social sciences. It is also complex and interdisciplinary as it brings together experts from fields such as geography, marketing, sociology, political science, business, and communication. But from a different perspective, I'm always happy to point out that place branding has a direct impact on everyone's life. Every single person's present and future are linked to the image and reputation of the place where they live. In this sense, for example, I consider myself fortunate to live in Barcelona. When you mention Barcelona abroad, the reactions are always positive and warm. Whether you're a guest, a speaker, or simply part of a conversation, this gives you a small advantage right from the start. We are talking about perceptions, an often superficial first assessment of a place, but this first impression can be instrumental in our decision-making process. My initial reaction when Jose and Gonzalo explained their research plans to me was one of surprise. First, because private companies are generally not interested in research unless it's the kind of research that can be directly monetized, and that was not the case here. Second, because the scope of the survey they were planning was really ambitious. And third, because of their transparency and honesty in asking academics from the university to help refine and supervise the methodology. These circumstances are not very common when it comes to collaboration between industry and academia. And that's why I agreed to collaborate and decided to invite a couple of colleagues from other universities to join in. I want to mention here Sara Viñals Miraren from Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, an expert in place branding, and Valeriano Piñeiro Naval, an expert on statistical analysis in the communication field from Universidad de Salamanca. They are both excellent researchers, and thanks to their contributions, I believe the study is now even stronger and more scientifically sound.
Yes, thank you. And I mean, perhaps Gonzalo, kind of in layman's terms, given that our audience for this podcast will probably be a mix of academics, but also very much practitioners, because they're at the sharp end. And for them, it's so important to have this argument for the impact of what they do. So can you describe the process that we went through?
Yeah. Bloom Consulting's role was to conduct the research, and that entailed several areas and several pillars. The first one was, as Jose was saying, we needed to ensure a robust methodology, right? That we didn't skip any step for later on be able to be an academic paper and published in academic journals. And when we were discussing the approach, it was very important that the study had a global representativity. That's why incorporating for the first time in a study like this one, nation and city branding officials was key. We have more than 115 government officials that were participating in that process. This is, as I was saying, very important part, because the first challenge we approached was to define perception. We were challenging the existing belief. What is your general perception? And thanks to their contribution through a very thorough Delphi process, we were able to crack the case, develop this taxonomy model, and define 13 perception elements that contribute and constitute the perception a country or a city has. Just a side note, for the ones that don't know what is a Delphi study, is a scientific approach to define the unknown. And thanks to different iterations, and opinions of a group of experts were able to describe something that is the closest to reality as possible, okay, without being very technical on this. The second part, which is very important, was that survey. We wanted to gather the global perceptions of as many countries and cities as possible. And for that, we did an ad hoc research that provided representativity from the subjects of study and from the countries of origin that the subjects were answering the perception. And this has been, I would say, scrutinized also by the academic committee. And we believe that for the first time, there's a study that talks about truly global perception, not about Europeans or G20 countries or that, okay? That is very important. This was our role, mainly, cracking the data too, accessing data, and partnering with the academics to see if the initial conclusions we were presenting had that rigor that it needed.
Do you have anything to add, José, on that process?
I would like to explain briefly what was our role as a scientific advisory board. Our role was especially important in three different steps, I think. First, it was generally speaking, it was to provide advice and insights on the research challenges and obstacles that need to be addressed before the research even begins, because we were in the research from the very spot, thanks to Bloom Consulting and City Nation Place. And then in the second phase, in the second step, we discuss the results and implications of the data with Gonzalo and José to ensure that we interpret the findings correctly and distinguish between what we can confidently affirm and what remains hypothetical. This was a very delicate, interesting discussion. What can we affirm with data and what still remains hypothetical? And lastly, and Gonzalo was mentioning before, and this is still ongoing, we are involved in publishing the results in academic journals, aiming to share them not only with practitioners, but also with the academic community.
I think that's so important. And in fact, it was something I was going to say to you, Gonzalo. I was having a call the other day with our advisory group of places, and we were actually having chat about how places might be using the research results that we have at this point. And somebody on the call said, I'd really like to see this research peer reviewed by other academics. And so, it's really good to hear that that's the next stage of the process, because that will really give the authority that some of the places are looking for. So let's have a look at the results. What did we find out, Gonzalo, top line? And I guess, for both of you, what was surprising about what you found out?
The main finding, if I had to say one, is that there is no doubt for the first time that perception matters, and that countries and cities with a better perception than others have higher returns on the attraction of tourists, investment, and talent. In other words, if you had a good perception, you will have an easier job to attract talents, investment, and tourism, compared to the ones that have a worse perception. This is a very important, because is again, for the first time, scientifically demonstrated that there is a moderate to strong correlation between the perception a country and a city has, which is at the end a nation and city brand, and its economic performance, okay? And I put economic performance is the direct impact on tourist revenues, FDI, inflows, and talent attraction. This is, I would say, one of the top lines of the study, but we can go further, because once we know it's moderately to strongly correlated, for the first time too, we can understand how much one factor, which is the perception of a country and a city, affects this economic performance. And the study shows that on average, depends on the cities and the industry, if it's tourism, investment, or talent, there is a 24% incidence. In other words, perception explains a 24% of the economic impact. And this is one of the surprising things, at least for us, is, wow, this is a lot. There's only one variable that accounts for almost a 25% of the decision. This is incredible. We know that perception is almost an 80% of the willingness. But one step forward is also a 24%, which is very important. And let's not be naive, there are other factors. that impact the investment, foreign direct investment, such as is to the business, taxation, the culture, I don't know, many factors, same for tourism, fair for talent and reasons to relocate. But this alone is at 24% on average, even more in some cases. And this for us is incredible and really fascinating to really start to talk about in this way. And the second part that was also very important for us is that as it is a statistic valid, we were able to create a model, a statistical model. We were understanding the rules and how things can behave in future scenarios. As you improve perception, the model tells how much countries with a better perception are performing. Hence, we can say that a small improvement in perception can bring, and here's some data, around a 12% improvement on the tourist receipts, or a 15 in FDI, or even more in talent. And this is incredible because the interesting thing is that there is a lot of money at stake. The impact is huge. Can you imagine if you improve 1 decimal your perception, that you could aspire to improve at 12% your international tourist receipts? That is for us a game-changing data that puts the conversation into another level.
And José, I mean, were you surprised that it came through with such a strong impact?
Yeah, from an academic point of view, the results are not extremely surprising in the sense that perception has a clear correlation with economic performance. But the value of the study is to put this in figures, quantifying this relationship. By saying, for example, that perception accounts for 24% of tourism receipts for a country is important. And even more so if this assertion is based not on estimates, but on empirical data. The study proves that the better the global perception of a country or a city, the better its performance in tourism, talent attraction, or foreign direct investment. So the consequence, in my view, for policymakers is clear. Investing in improving your place's perception has a real influence in results. Or in other words, do you want to improve the performance of your place? Then you should invest in branding. This is very important from my point of view. But this is the basic definition of brand equity, the positive effect that a brand has on a customer's perception of a product or service. This is the added value that a brand brings to a product or service beyond its functional benefit. Replacing product or service by place is not easy and automatic, but it still works. And this is in general terms what this study has proven.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about how those teams who are asking for budget to manage place reputation can use this research. I mean, we've recently seen that the city of Sheffield in the UK has, we call it a relaunch. They've evolved and launched a new place narrative. We were chatting with Mark Mobbs, who is the place brand manager for Sheffield and who ensured that Sheffield was a participant in this study. And certainly using this research helped convince his stakeholders that the investment was needed to deliver this new narrative. And so that's a really positive thing to see. I don't know if you've had any other feedback from any of the other participants, Gonzalo, that you're able to share.
Yeah, actually, there are a couple of applications of the study that places can start using right away. The first one is the taxonomy model, which is a model that everyone can use. And the second one is what actually we've been talking to Mark on this is the untapped potential that the research has. And it's very important to understand that all the participants in the study got the data and they were able to understand what were the global perceptions for their country and city, in this case a city, from 13 points of view, 13 perception elements from foreign affairs, governance, mitigation of global causes, products and services, sports, urban and rural environment, society and values, education level, safety and crime, natural assets and the scenery, and a couple more. And that is very important because this puts, for the first time, a strategic approach to the overall perception. You can drill down into a level and start to understand in which of these 13 perception elements you should be focusing on from a strategic point of view. The data we have can be correlated, and we can understand the weight of each perception. We can understand the status quo, where are we and we want to reach, or where do we think, and stakeholders know this, the potential of the city or the country is. And we can start to work with all these data, and we can start to define priority areas, perception elements that countries and cities, if approached well, have a higher value, a higher upside to win, impacting on the overall perception. In other words, if you are a country or a city and you are really seeing the data and you are deciding if investing in improving your sport perception or the mitigation of global causes or the products and services in the economy, these data will allow you to understand where is your biggest gain and what are the chances that improving in one of these perception elements can have a higher impact on the overall perception. And this is for us another level of conversations with country and city officials, providing data and applying it to the strategy and the development of the country or city.
Can I ask a question to Gonzalo? Do you think it will be a challenge for you that this study will raise the expectations from the policymakers?
I hope so. I hope so. I prefer to manage with that rather that this doesn't, no one cares about it, to be honest. But we have continued playing with numbers, and we have seen the weight of all these variables. And in some countries and cities, you can really understand that there is clearly a place to point and a place to not correct the perception, but improve perceptions that we see that there's an exponential benefit impacting the overall perception. And as always, we say the perception is intangible. A small improvement of perception can have a huge impact. And we're providing a new way of looking at it, a canvas to make informed decisions. And it's not because I say so or the city official, country officials say so. There is data, and you can understand how the perception is being shaped in a different way than you could do before this study.
I mean, José, I think that was a really good question. I mean, I was about to say that, we have often talked about how it's such a long-term challenge to change perception of a place reputation, particularly at nation level. There are so many inbuilt prejudices or perceptions of a place, and that has often led to voices in if it's an industry, whatever, say you can't just have an ad campaign, which I agree with. It's not just an ad campaign, it's around policy, it's around all of those other, your culture, how your people feel about all of this can impact perception, and trying to get people to move away from just thinking that an ad campaign is going to sort it and that it needs a lot more. And I think this data gives weight to that argument, but also gives direction for places to have a much more strategic approach to managing their place reputation than simply thinking we need a new logo or we need a new ad campaign. But from your perspective, José, I mean, you are an academic and you work with many students and academics in trying to provide practitioners with a better understanding of place branding. For you, how do you see this being used in the academic world?
Well, just a small clarification. We have already published one paper about the relationship between perceptions and tourism in a country, in 4 countries. And we have been just accepted another submission in Journal of Global Mobility, a journal about the relationship between perceptions and talent attraction. So this is a field where students are more and more interested in this field. I mean, right now, for example, I'm head of coordinate a master program in communication. And out of 25 students, for example, we've had 4 projects, final projects that are related to place branding in some way. So the field is more and more interesting for students, and it's more and more interesting for academics.
Yes, thank you. I mean, one of the key things we haven't said, of course, is that this report is available for anybody listening to this podcast to download for free, to read those results and to understand how it can be applied. So the report is available for free download either from the Bloom Consulting website or from the City Nation Place website. And if you've got any questions about the details of the report or how you might apply it in your place, then it's Gonzalo and the team at Bloom Consulting that you need to get in touch with. But before we sign off and thank everybody for listening, is there anything that we've not said that you would like to, a last thought that you would like to leave our listeners with? Gonzalo.
Again, going back to how countries and cities can use it, I think it has another benefit that it was not spoken out loud as it should, which is you can now answer the classic questions that are related to why we should be working on perception. What is the benefit that gives a seat to a city for improving their perception? Because we all know that when we talk with higher government officials, they have other priorities, roads to build, hospitals to build. There is, I don't know, not so much a responsibility on this. There's not sometimes a brand department on this. And it's very important because we can tell you that this is important and this can definitely help to sustain mission and place branding initiatives during the years. And that is key because you need time to change perception and you need a budget to change perception. And remember, branding is not the same as marketing. And the industry has always been driven by marketing KPIs, such as tourists, investment, and talent, which is branding is about perception.
It's connecting the two. Anything, José, that you would like to leave everybody with?
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is just to congratulate Bloom Consulting and City Nation Place for being so brave to start this journey. It's a difficult one, but a rewarding one in the end.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. We certainly had a very positive response to it from people who attend City Nation Place conferences and visit our website. And I hope you have as well.
As I said at the beginning, it has been a fascinating journey, incredible challenges, incredible learnings. And this is always easier and much better with incredible partners along the way.
All of us have learned something from it, which is great. And it's there and we continue the work. So thank you very much, Gonzalo, for sharing the details and for José for sharing your perspective on that and giving us a little bit of depth to the understanding. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this podcast. As I said, the report is there and available for you to download. And do get in touch with Gonzalo if you have any questions. Gonzalo's details are all over the Bloom Consulting website. Thank you for listening.